Thank you, Ashwin. Thanks for this introduction. Now, before we go into the session with our special guest today, I would like to set the tone for this entire session, which is going to be very, very unique. I must tell you this. So, if we look in retrospect, while this whole pandemic caused a great deal of social and economic unrest, upheaval, that we have never seen before in our lifetime, and I wish that we will never see it again. However, in the hindsight, it was not all that bad. From a business point of view, many organizations took a very different, a very unique collaborative approach to tackling this crisis by turning to a concept called open innovation, which has been otherwise also gaining ground. As we waded our way through this crisis, while many companies were found grappling with for sheer sustenance, many others turned to open innovation to produce creative and very unexpected solutions. As a concept, open innovation allows ideas to flow openly through by way of inviting customers, by way of inviting employers, stakeholders, I mean, every constituent of the ecosystem to contribute and build upon the isolated resources, bring them together and create something different. The potential upsides for all sides of an open innovation collaboration are extremely massive. It seems, I mean, whatever I have said so far, it seems the approach is worth pursuing, whether or not we are in a crisis. It doesn't really require a crisis to jump onto an open innovation bandwagon. However, making it work requires a different mindset, which also includes the concerns of proprietorship or issues like IP to only focus on creative value. We need to leverage partners' expertise, embrace new partners, and create this whole new ecosystem to reap the benefits of open innovation. Now, to talk about various facets of open innovation, I have with me Avnish Sabharwal. Avnish is the managing director of Accenture Ventures and Open Innovation, and he is a true champion of this topic, if I may say so. So, welcome to the EIS 2021, Avnish. Thank you for agreeing to talk to us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, Rahul.
So let me just begin, by asking you that you have been one of the few pioneers of open innovation in India. So can we request you to throw some more light on what is open innovation and what is its relevance in the current socio-economic context?
Yeah, sure. So I think open innovation as a term was first introduced by Professor Henry Chesbrough in 2003. I think he was from the Cass Business School. And since then, it has been applied loosely and differently by different organizations, right? For me, it's a business management model for innovation that promotes collaboration with people and organizations outside the company, right? In this sense, open innovation challenges are a true cultural break from the company's silo mentality and the secrecy traditionally associated with corporate R&D, right? So this innovation model becomes viable when the company acknowledges that there are many bright professionals and greater knowledge outside the organization. And as I always say, that the rate of innovation will always be faster outside the organization than inside, because a lot of innovation happens the silos. So that's how I will describe open innovation. So for many years, right, I think I've been associated with the open innovation for about 7 years. I've been working with our clients, both global and national, on many engagements. I've taught thousands of executives on how to innovate in a more distributed, decentralized, in a participatory way, right? And the initial response whenever you talk to clients or other stakeholders is that my company needs more of this, right? They think that, yeah, this is the best thing which has happened. But then slowly, despite the enthusiasm, companies rarely follow through. And we have also witnessed how companies have, used small things like hackathons or other forms of, open innovation to generate heaps of creative ideas that never reach the point of implementation, leading to frustration among employees and the stakeholders and other partners you are working with, especially startups, right? So at many companies, this kind of distributed, decentralized, and participatory way of innovation still remains an ambition that hasn't yet come true and hasn't realized the kind of value it had promised. But what has happened is that open innovation found a very unlikely catalyst recently, and I think you mentioned about that, which was COVID, right? So amidst the gloom and doom of the early months of COVID-19 crisis, something surprisingly uplifting started to happen. Right, companies began to come together to work at an unprecedented level, putting the ability to create value before the opportunity to make a buck. And I think if you look at how the even the discovery of the vaccines have happened, like the kind of innovation which has gone to in that is very open, is very collaborative. While different companies came up with different ways of manufacturing the vaccine, but there was a lot of free flowing information which has enabled us to do that, right? That's one of the great examples of the power of open innovation. And from an Accenture perspective as well, we worked extensively with startups to come with solutions for our employees and clients in areas around, for example, mental wellness or track and trace or social distancing, right? So this kind of work, which has started happening, and it's much more collaboration and openness. A lot of it induced because of COVID, because it became a necessity rather than something which was good to do, has been heartening to see, right? But while this is, obviously COVID required that, open innovation has also, great potential, as you rightly said in the beginning, Rahul, that, it has great potential outside the crisis as well. For example, Accenture is, we have a managed service model on open innovation, which we call open innovation as a service.
Okay.
And we work extensively with startups and our clients in this model. One example I like to give is, we, along with one of our large airline clients, we work with a startup called Syrian Labs and established a center of excellence in India to work on contract administration and management that leverages AI and automation. And this was fantastic. This was able to provide a return on investment to the client, in just 4 months, what they had perceived in about. So that's one example of, when you bring in, like Accenture does a lot of contract management and we are experts in that. But even us, we would like to partner with more disruptive startups so that our clients get the best of both the worlds, right? They get best of Accenture and they get best of ecosystem. So I guess, that's how I like to start the discussion, Rahul, that, open innovation in some way or form is being practiced by every organization. So that's a good thing, but value realization has not happened. But the COVID has been a big catalyst for that. And I think what we are seeing now, as organizations, one was the COVID emergency, right? But the other thing was the digitalization, right? There was a need for organizations to almost overnight become digital organizations. And if you were an offline organization or, you are doing things in the brick and mortar space, you had to go into the cloud. You need to use AI and data to have better understanding of your customer behavior. And all of these capabilities you could not just create on your own overnight, right? So you had to partner with startups and other partners. So I think these are promising, developments. But to what extent will these observations hold true in the future? As businesses one day will go back to normal, how many of the altered ways of innovating will stick inside organizations and companies? That has to be seen. And how will we as a society face other grand challenges? Right. I think all those things are questions which need to be answered as things unfold in the future.
No, I was about to ask you the same thing. I mean, we saw a lot of large organizations committing to, for example, manufacture indigenous ventilators, and these are the organizations which have never seen a ventilator in their ecosystem. However, you pointed out towards a very valid aspect of whether these organizations will continue to innovate in such openness, will create an ecosystem, which actually gives a further boost to the culture of open innovation, or will they go back to their old methods of proprietary innovations, is to be seen. So if I talk to you about certain models of open innovation, are there both from within India and outside, are there any emerging models that we need to know about, that you are currently seeing?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think initial models, if you look at, as I talked about, things like, for example, hackathons or working in some sort of an accelerator model, right? Opening up a corporate accelerator, or doing some co-innovation. These were the initial models of open innovation. And open innovation generally happened, with a small team doing something, but was not really into the mainstream of what was happening in an organization. So some of the new trends which I am now experiencing working with both global and Indian clients is, one is that the entire ecosystem strategy is becoming part of the corporate strategy. Mm-hmm. Right? This was never there. And there are many new roles which are coming up, which are enabling this strategy. For example, an ecosystem architect. So an ecosystem architect is responsible for designing, shaping, and executing the open innovation strategy for an organization, right? So it's become an intrinsic part of your corporate strategy. It's not something which is happening at the edges, or 4 or 5 people are doing that as part of a innovation agenda or something. So that, I think, is one of the key trends where this has become a key part of what organization does and how the organization innovates. The second is more and more customers, distributed co-creation, right? So more organizations are opening their innovation effort, one, to collaborate with customers. And this is what we call distributed co-creation, like by leveraging technology to create global communities of customer innovators. So some examples, for example, Lego introduced the Lego Ideas Initiative that was based on the open innovation model, a place for customers to share their ideas on possible new products, enter contests, and vote for the ideas that they most liked. Starbucks has an entire website dedicated to consumer co-creation. Since its launch, it has seen widespread use and success. And the main function of mystarbucksidea.com is to encourage enable customers to submit ideas that would potentially help Starbucks franchise grow. So those are a couple of new models. The third model which I've seen growing is crowdsourcing innovation, right? And this is becoming very, very important as organizations are trying to tussle with and address some very difficult problems. So they are coming up with, they are using platforms where they can crowdsource their problems. And for example, GE, if you look at GE's First Build initiative, this is a collaboration platform that connects people from various parts of life to come up with resourceful ideas and provide solutions in form of new home appliances. And then winning ideas are developed and sold in open market. So the crowdsourcing bit is catching up as well as part of open innovation. Another thing which was at the periphery earlier, Rahul, but now it's much more integrated, is the collaboration with academia. So organizations were, obviously collaborating with startups, but for them to get into academia was something which was still not mainstream. That's happened now. If you look at NASA was helped by Harvard and London Business School in developing a code, optimum content of medical kits required by NASA missions. This solution could not have come at such a low cost from internal funded and sponsored solutions. And Science Exchange is another example of the corporate academic linkage, which allows them to operate in a market for organizing research services. In Accenture, we have now very strategic collaborations going with, on cloud and edge computing. We are collaborating with Indian Institute of Science. On autonomous robotic systems, we are working with IIT Madras. And on the whole area of sustainability, we are working with Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. So, you can see that while, you are further going into very early innovation now, trying to get that innovation from the e-cells of some of the top engineering and management schools in the world. So this is another new trend which has come up. Another one is the open innovation and the collaboration happening with tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, right? So that was something which was again not there earlier. Innovation was restricted, if you look at India, to some of the key, innovation hubs like Bangalore or NCR. But now you can see that has gone into not only tier 2, tier 3 cities, but further as well. So open innovation is spreading its wings and going into, cities which are beyond what were traditionally there. And I think the last point I like to talk about is, again, just like cities, there were innovation hotspots globally, right? And then Silicon Valley and, China, definitely, London were some of them. But now you see new innovation hubs are coming up. So, for example, you could look at Finland, or you could look at, Lagos in Nigeria, or Melbourne, or Montreal in Canada, Sao Paulo in Brazil. So new open innovation hubs are going to get created, where more innovation is expected to happen than has traditionally happened, because that was restricted to 4 or 5 big innovation spots earlier. So I would say these are some of the new trends which we are seeing in the market, Rahul, on open innovation.
Yeah, so I must tell that the viewers and the delegates, the CXOs who are listening to this conversation, I think Avnish is already building a recipe for you. You have to just very carefully listen. Listen to what the ingredients are for open innovation, and then start experimenting with those in your ecosystem. So excellent, Avnish. If we move on from here, and for a moment we talk about the impact of open innovation. How does it challenge the traditional ways of innovation? I mean, that's where the friction comes from. Could you give some examples, and how has Accenture been able to generate significant value from open innovation, while quite a few organizations seem to be struggling to derive value out of it?
No, absolutely. I think so. There have been traditional barriers to adopting open innovation. One of them, for example, is the protection of IP, right? And then that's where, when I talked about the R&D stuff earlier, right? So a number of organizations think that they would lose control over their IP if they collaborate extensively with external partners and more of new disruptive partners, right? For example, if Accenture has to collaborate with an SAP or Microsoft, that's not a big issue, right? These are similar organizations. We do billions of dollars of business together. But if you have to collaborate with a smaller partner, a smaller startup, which you are not very sure of, then those things come up. So that's one thing, right? The other is this not invented here syndrome. That's a very big thing, right? So organizations, think that they can only create something. And if you look at Accenture, for example, it would have been easy for Accenture, being a digital leader globally. We could certainly say that, we don't need any help. We can build everything on our own, right? But even Accenture cannot do that. And that's why I said that the pace of innovation is happening at I think during COVID, in about 18 months, we have seen the innovation which would have happened in 10 years. Right. So if that's the kind of pace of innovation, how does Accenture or any other large organization try and do everything on their own? But this not invented syndrome is very powerful. The third thing is about return on investment, right? So while this is a common thing around innovation, right? So it's not just because of open innovation, even internal organization, initiatives of innovation struggle with this. How do you show return on investment? But when you are, I call this the analogies of a beast and an ugly child, right? The beast is the R&D, and beast has no dearth of funding, right? Every organization will have 95% of their innovation fund going to the beast, and the ugly child is the small startup or the small partner you are working with. So nobody would like to give even $2 to the ugly child, right? While if you look at and if you really do a very good assessment, you will find that the return on investment from the ugly child might be faster and bigger than putting the dollars into the beast. But these are the traditional reasons of why organizations struggle. But the big reason, which is not that apparent, and I think that's where organizations struggle, and what I call innovation polarities, right? And this is very interesting to understand here, Rahul, right? And for the audience as well. So what is an innovation polarity? Like if you look at what are corporates trying to do, right? When they are innovating, they think that they have to behave like a startup. And if you have to behave like a startup, you have to obviously exhibit some sort of characteristics of the startup. And one of them is tolerance for failure.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody will say, oh, we have to be tolerant to failure, and we have to celebrate failure, and that is how we will become more innovative. But the problem is that the big organizations don't know that if you look at a scale from 1 to 10, right, how they quickly go from one side to the other. So rather than tolerating failure, you will find that they are tolerating underperformance or mediocrity. Right. So they don't know how quickly they have gone from one to the other, right? So tolerance of failure is when you are trying to be tolerant to something which could have stretched the boundaries of innovation in an organization. But if somebody or some team is doing something and then wrapping it under in a wrapper of mediocrity, organizations are not able to understand the difference, and then they think that open innovation or something is not working. So that's one polarity. The second is what we call experimentation safety nets versus individual accountability, right? So again, if you look at if you have to behave like a startup, you need to experiment, right? Very fail fast and quick iteration, sprints and all that. But that does not mean that there is no individual accountability of what you are doing. Again, organizations are not able to understand this polarity between providing a safety net to a team versus having them accountable to what they are doing. Another polarity is agility versus perfection, right? So this is something which organizations, they want to go and behave like a startup. So they think that they have to be agile, and when they have to be agile, they have to hop from one project to the other. But actually, perfection or excellence does not have to be sacrificed in this, right? For example, if you look at Accenture, our tagline is high performance delivered. So that does not mean that we have left excellence because we need to be agile. So I hope you are understanding that these kind of polarities which are happening, not very visible, right? People are not understanding, but these are things which big organizations struggle with. They're not able to comprehend these polarities. So that's probably the answer to your first question, Rahul, that, what is happening and why are organizations struggling? Some are, some reasons are pretty open, like I told you, the not invented here or the protection of IP or ROI. But the polarities are what is really the problem behind, organizations not getting the value out of their open innovation initiative. And I think, so going to the second, what has Accenture done differently and how we have addressed these polarities, right? So I think, we have also had about 7 years of journey. And I have, to be honest, I have enough scars on my back. So let me be very clear to say that, we are not that, from the first year itself, we were producing excellent, kind of value. But yes, we have grown and we have learned from our mistakes. And I think, kudos to Accenture as well as a corporation that, they understand the value of, working with smaller partners and extending our ecosystem to much beyond the regular partners we work with, right? So if you look at, if you had, few years back when we were, just around the digital kind of wave, just around that time, if you had asked Accenture, who are your, how would you describe your ecosystem? We would say, okay, the wave one partners are Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce. And, then you would say, okay, well, wave two, and then you will look at wave two. Wave two could probably be the cloud natives, right? Like the Google or the AWS or Workday, but, that was also still coming there, but that's where it will stop. But today, if you ask, right, we obviously have wave one, wave two, but we have wave three, which are the deep tech startups we work with. The wave four, which is the academia we work with as well, right? So that has, so these are all extended parts of our organization. And then, we understand that innovation not going to happen just within Accenture or with our big partners, but it's going to happen with our smaller partners as well, and also, with academia. So that's something which we have integrated into the Accenture way of life, or our innovation architecture. So that's another thing, right? Accenture has a formal innovation architecture. That's a very important thing, because if the formality around innovation is not there, then it becomes very difficult for organizations to realize value. We have a formal innovation architecture, and open innovation and ventures are an intrinsic part of the innovation architecture. So that's something, again, which we have done differently. And the most important thing why we have succeeded, Rahul, is that we have since day one focused on creating value, right? A lot of organizations and their open innovation initiatives which happen today are branding exercises, right? Because of FOMO, fear of missing out, and everybody's come out with an accelerator, and they read about this every day in the newspapers, because that's the only thing which comes in the papers, right? And that gives them FOMO. And then for that, they have to do some sort of if I may have the liberty to explain to you the journey of corporates, right? First, they will start off with what I call a startup tourism, right? They will go around in, 7-8 people will get together, and they will go around to Israel or Silicon Valley, or, some maybe UK, and try and see what's going on, meet a few startups, meet a few VCs, come back, everything is gone, right? The second part of their journey is, when they open what I call a startup zoo, which is a corporate accelerator, right? So they will dedicate a physical team, and they get 5-7 cohort people, will sit in a cohort, and they will do some sort of innovation there, and the senior management will be asked to come and meet these people, see what is happening there. So that drama, continues to happen, but a lot of this does not translate into value, because the best what happens is a POC, and that also, a free POC, right? So POC happens, it does not convert into a deployment. And if it doesn't convert into a deployment, then you are not able to create value, right? So these are the kind of things which we have gone, we have made sure that we didn't get stuck into these kind of things. We want to create value, and we found a successful recipe of creating value for our client, for startups as well as Accenture. And that is what has made us successful. So for us, startups are an equal partner. They are not a vendor or a supplier or a small partner, we can boss around, right? They are bringing in something to Accenture which Accenture does not have, which is very disruptive innovation. So they are our equal partner and are treated like that as well. So these are some of the things we have done differently, which has made Accenture reasonably successful.
No, I think this was the most important part of my conversation with you, where you busted the myths around polarities through the examples of polarities. And also, I was constantly thinking about a term called festivals. I mean, most corporates are in a festive mode when they showcase that they are also championing or trying to adopt open innovation. So don't make it tourism. Don't make it a zoo. If you are committed to it, better be serious about certain things. And the way you have explained is remarkable. So in the interest of time, Avnish, I have to move on to the last question, which is going to be how should the CXOs, the CIOs, head of technologies, transition from the old traditional approaches of innovation to a more flexible, transparent, nimble approach of open innovation, which is different from a tick mark technology hackathon or some festival like that?
Yeah, I think some of it I've already alluded to, Rahul. So I think the organizations have to have a mindset change, right? So this is all about a mindset and a cultural change. And the more close the organization is, the more difficult they find the transition to be. But as I said, COVID has been a great leveler. I think most of the difficult time, both from a personal and business perspective, realize that, and so if you look at two major forces, right, the two major forces obviously is COVID and the digital, right? If you combine the two, it requires an organization to, if you want to really succeed and thrive and not just survive, even for survival, you need to do things differently. So I think agility, it becomes very important. Resilience, becomes very important. Collaboration becomes very important in the new environment. But if you really want to do something which is which is going to create value, first of all, we should understand that rather than organizations are paranoid about capturing value, right? But they don't give that much attention to creating value. So I think as long as we are creating value, all of us are creating value, then we are making the size of the innovation pie bigger for everybody, rather than start thinking from the beginning that what will be your size of the pie and how will you capture value. It's an important thing, but I think more important is to create value. And every organization, as Accenture has done, needs to have an ecosystem strategy, and that ecosystem strategy needs to have a very high level sponsor, hopefully the CEO himself, right? And that is very important, and it should not be getting done somewhere, because a lot of times the open innovation initiative is being run by so-called innovation teams who have good intent but no money, right? So that is an issue, right? So for them, just to get the startups and do a POC, that is their metric. Their metric is not for deployment and really creating value for the organization, right? So I think you need to align the strategy, structure, and talent of your organization with the external environment to create real value out of open innovation.
Absolutely. So I mean, to summarize this, I think it needs a pretty serious approach. The term might sound very fancy, and people might like to latch upon the term just to showcase their ability for openness and innovation. However, it actually requires a very serious approach. You have to let go a lot of things. You have to bring in a fresh lease of life in terms of new culture. And
it's a structural change, it's a mindset change. Absolutely. Both are very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, good that you underlined these two facts. It's a mindset change, it's a structural change. So whosoever wants to jump onto this bandwagon needs to be very careful about it. Do not do it just for the heck of it. Otherwise, if you do it with dedication and planning, I think the horizon is very, very vast. Thank you very much, Avinash, for talking to us. It was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahul, for having me. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Ashwin.